So it turns out that week 3 in the NFL was simply week 2 continued. It was week 2, part 2. And I have to say that this has been a week from absolute hell for bettors, for pickers out there. If you went above 500, straight up picks, you are a savant. You are a master. Okay? Because I don't even know if I went above 500 on straight up picks. This was an absolutely wild NFL week. A tough week. And a lot of crazy results. The NFL in the first month of the season just completely continues to boggle my mind and not even make any sort of sense. One iota of sense at all. Man, so many headlines. We're going to go through the games that I find most crucial to discuss in this reaction. If you guys want to see this weekly reaction on the Bottom Line View, make sure to let me know in the comment section below. Don't forget to Gronk spike the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's begin, man, with the game that I just finished with and emotionally, took the most out of me. The San Francisco 49ers fall to the Los Angeles Rams 27-24. And honestly, just an absolutely brutal disaster of a collapse by the 49ers. This was very reminiscent of the Ravens game last week, where the Ravens just let one slip away between their fingertips against the Raiders last week. Now, this game was on the road. The other game, Baltimore, was at home. But man, 27-24 Rams. You could see the momentum kind of coming for the Rams down the stretch into the fourth quarter. They end up outscoring them 20-3 in the late third to the end of the game. Like, the Niners were up 14-0 at one point in time. I believe it was 14-7 at halftime. It was 24-14 late in the game. Then all of a sudden, Moody misses a field goal. The Rams connect on a deep pass to Tutu Atwell, and they tie it up. And then the Niners, they're close. They're in that fringe territory to get a field goal, to get the lead. And they are not able to get that first down. Purdy just gets a gain of 1 on a scramble, and they have to punt it away. There's a long punt return, which ultimately sets up, of course, a pass interference call, and then ultimately the game-winning field goal. And this was just a game where doesn't really make a lot of sense on paper. Like, the Niners, 24 first downs, Rams, 19 first downs. They were better on third down efficiency, 6 for 11, Rams 5 for 12. Fourth down, both teams were effective on fourth down. Rams 2 for 2, Niners 1 for 1. Rams had less rushing yards. Niners had 137, Rams had 98. Niners had a 266-yard day through the air. Rams had 198. Niners had 403 yards. Rams had 296. But ultimately, and even the Niners had more sacks, no real turnovers in the game. It was just one of those games, man. It was just a wild game to watch. There were a ton of penalties on both sides. Once again, the refs just heavily involved in all of these outcomes in all of these games. 8 penalties for the Rams, 8 penalties for the Niners for 110 yards. Ultimately, one of the big ones at the end of the game, which was a penalty on Devondre Campbell, a pass interference. And it kind of allows us to forget how incredible Jawan Jennings was in the game. 11 catches on 12 targets for 175 yards, 3 touchdowns, an incredible day in fantasy. Brock Purdy actually played really well, 22 for 30, 270, 3 touchdowns. But at the end of the day, it just speaks to, this is a rivalry game. This is an NFC West game, coaches that know each other very well. And there's been a lot made of Shanahan owns McVay. Both guys were missing players. I mean, Niners are missing some of their best players. Even Trent Williams left for a portion of the game. But Debo out, Kittle out, McCaffrey out. For the Rams, their offensive line's heavily beat up. Kupp out, Puka Nacua out. the Rams, Matthew Stafford just pulling off a Matthew Stafford extravaganza like he did with Detroit for so many years. Kyren Williams getting the clutch red zone carries, the clutch key yards in short yardage. But man, I have to say right now, the Niners did look like the better team for a majority of the game, but they certainly have flaws and certainly have issues. We saw last week they dropped a game to Minnesota, which honestly in Minnesota doesn't look too bad considering they were missing Debo, they were missing McCaffrey after what the Vikings did to the Houston Texans this week. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but this game is just one you can't afford to lose. Am I fully panicked about the Niners? Absolutely not. They're missing players. But if they continue to drop these kind of games, that's going to put them in jeopardy for this division. And that's going to put them in jeopardy maybe even for the playoffs. I'm not exactly sure, but definitely for the division, considering Seattle is now 3-0. They play Seattle in Seattle coming up. I'll be at the game. And that game could also feature many Niners being out of that game. So that might be a big game for San Francisco. Obviously, they do get a bit of a break. They head back home. They play New England, so they can get back to 500, and that can kind of square them up a little bit. Los Angeles, this was kind of a kitchen sink game for them, obviously. They were playing their biggest rival, the team that they often never beat, and they were 0-2. They had to have this game. Somehow they get it off of just a miraculous performance by Matthew Stafford. He was precise, he was accurate, he was money. Tutu Atwell made a number of plays, even a play that didn't count, a throw down the field off a trick play. They fake a punt, they get it. Like, the Rams just did everything they could in the key situations in this game to pull this off miraculously. And again, I thought this was probably Brock Purdy's best game of the season by quite a wide margin, and the Niners still found a way to lose it. So I think the Niners definitely need to work on, their third down defense, their critical down defense, their run defense to a certain degree, especially in short yardage. I think their offense, honestly, there wasn't too much wrong with it. They didn't turn it over. They didn't take too many sacks. I think there was a little bit too much on the plate of Brock Purdy near the end of the game to make things happen and to come out on top. But when that's your guy and you don't really have much else, you kind of got to live and die with it. So it's kind of tough to say there. But ultimately, when you talk about the Niners, 403 yards, if you would have told me that before the game, Rams 296, they probably win that game more often than not. And that's 2 games now that they've had 400 yards from their offense and they've lost. So I do think they'll figure it out ultimately, but this was just a crazy game. This was the game to watch in the afternoon. A lot of people thought it would be Arizona, Detroit. A lot of people thought it might be, earlier, the Eagles, the Saints. A lot of people thought it would be Dallas and Baltimore. Now, this was the best game I watched probably all day. It was a really good game, really entertaining. Give McVay a lot of credit. Give Stafford a lot of credit. Kyren Williams a lot of credit. The Rams defense, the Rams special teams at the end of the day for making enough plays to come through. That is a big win for the Rams to keep their season alive. If they can get Nakua back, if they can get Cup back, I'm not sure what the status is with their offensive line. But if Stafford continues to play with this level of intelligence, the way he was controlling the game, the way that he was operating at the line of scrimmage, getting rid of the ball, throwing the ball accurately, the way that he was audibling in critical situations to get them to the right checks and the right run calls in those red zone touches. I mean, there was 2 or 3 different big plays in this game where Stafford check. They got to the right run. They got the first down. They got a big play. They got a touchdown. So, man, give the Rams a lot of credit. Niners, they'll definitely have to move down in my power rankings just because they're 1-2 now. I definitely still feel like they're a top 10 team. There's no doubt. But they just have not put the results together outside of that Monday Night Football game. And they got to get healthy. They got to find a way to get healthy. So the Rams, they keep their season alive because going 0-3 is just, it's absolutely a backbreaker. It's a season ender. Now they're 1-2. Both these teams 1-2. We'll see which one can continue forward. I would not have the Niners panic meter too high, but man, that is a tough game to lose. Now, another team that just lost a devastating game last week, and I brought them up already, the Baltimore Ravens, a huge game, 28-25. They take it over Dallas, and I thought this was going to be a runaway Baltimore victory. Ultimately, it becomes close at the end. The Ravens only win 28-25, and it looked like they were going to lose this game. It looked like they were going to give this game away one more time. Last week, they did it to the Ravens. You look at the stats, and It was an overwhelming first half performance, a three-quarter performance by Baltimore, where they were far and away the better team. They were running the ball down Dallas's throat. Derrick Henry was torching the Cowboys, saying, "You should have signed me. You should have signed the king. Jerry, I'm the king, not you, brother." But you look at the stats at the end of the game. More first downs for Dallas, 26-24. 7 for 13 on third down. Baltimore 4 for 9. You look at rushing yards. Baltimore, 274 rushing yards. They almost find a way to lose this game, as Dallas only has 51 rushing yards, 361 passing yards for the Dallas Cowboys in this game. In the second half, a lot of those came. And Dak, almost pulled off a Superman performance in the second half. 456 yards for Baltimore, 412 yards for Dallas, right? Like 0 interceptions for both sides. 13 penalties for Baltimore, which was critical. 13 penalties, 105 yards. Only 6 penalties for 44 yards for Dallas. And again, Baltimore almost blew this game. Like, Lamar actually was really good in this game when he needed to be. 12 for 15, 182 yards, 1 touchdown, 139.4 passer rating. He ran the ball very well. He continues to look explosive, fast, agile, elusive, right, with his touches. Dak Prescott, 28 for 51, 379, 2 touchdowns. But he was struggling earlier in the game to kind of make those third down conversions. CeeDee Lamb fumbled in the red zone. If he doesn't fumble in the red zone, you wonder if they complete this comeback and actually win this game. Right? Like, Dallas just continues to be a one-dimensional team. Their defense continues to struggle with the run game. Their offense continues to struggle, to run the ball. You're not going to win many football games when you're only running the ball for 51 yards and you're allowing 274 yards. That's just bottom line. Like, Dallas needs to figure this thing out, because they lose control of the game. And when you're not running the ball and when you're not stopping the run, you just never feel like you have control of the game. And that's what I've noticed with Dallas this whole year. Like, yes, their pass protection's a little bit worse. Yes, their weapons are a little bit overrated, but I thought that Ferguson stepped up big in this game in the second half, continuing to put together some catches and get Dak some confidence, and string together some things. Like Turpin, he had a big touchdown in this game, 51 yards. Bateman had a big touchdown in this game. Zay Flowers was rather quiet. Likely Andrews, not a lot from the pass catchers. Zay Flowers did make a critical reception on, I believe it was a third down, to extend that drive for the Ravens to close this game out. And it was a money throw by Lamar against Trayvon Diggs, and they made it happen. But this game was all about the inability to stop the run game of the Ravens, the inability to stop Derrick Henry, 25 carries, 151 yards, 6 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. You're just not going to beat the Ravens when they run all over you. You've got to force the Ravens to be a pass-first team. And I think this is why I'd continue to say, despite, the Ravens are 1-2 now. The Ravens, to me, like, they looked much like the team in the first half that we expected to see coming into the year. But they continue to be a team that I think, these are polar opposites. Ravens are too reliant on run game. Dallas too reliant on pass game. And that's, that was ultimately kind of what I took away from this game. I think that Baltimore needs to be more consistent from a balance standpoint on offense, from a passing standpoint on offense. Dallas needs to be way better in terms of run defense and, the ability to run the ball. So those are my ultimate takeaways from that game. Aubrey hits a 65-yard field goal. Like, he might be the best player in the NFL. I'm not even being dramatic. I'm not even throwing that out there nonchalant, willy-nilly. Aubrey 65-yard field goal, you got to be kidding. And when he lines up for that kick, you're positive he's going to make it. You're absolutely positive he's going to make it. So, just absurd. I think Baltimore, obviously they needed this win. Both teams are now 1-2. I'm very low on Dallas right now. I just don't like how Dallas looks. It feels like every game they're getting pushed around. Feels like their defense doesn't have those players that fly to the football and make aggressive, hard, tough tackles. They don't have, and you really see that at the linebacker level. They don't have that speed at the second level. They don't have that physicality, that energy, that killer on defense. They don't have that dude on defense other than Micah Parsons, and he's more of a pass game player, right? They don't have that guy in the run game that just sets a tempo. He sets the tone for the defense. I think that's really hurting them. And I think offensively, they're just far too reliant on throwing the ball. And if they're not converting early on offense and they're not scoring early on offense, they get themselves in a hole because every team now knows the formula to beat Dallas. Run the ball, set up play action, allow them to get over aggressive, use their aggression and their speed against them, screen them, be, horizontal, right? Like use that against them. And then on defense, just let them run the ball. And then basically concede the run, which they're not good at running, and just get after Dak and cover CeeDee Lamb. And that's pretty much the formula to beat Dallas. It just feels too obvious how you have to play Dallas. And I think honestly, they should just get rid of McCarthy. I don't understand why they didn't get id of McCarthy before. I really don't understand why McCarthy is still the coach. Do I think McCarthy's a terrible coach? No, I think he's fairly average, but I don't look at this team in any way, shape, or form, offensively, defensively, and look at them being extraordinary from a schematical perspective. I think, if anything, we've seen their defense has been exposed the last couple of weeks through the running game. Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry, two veteran running backs taking it to this defense. And we've seen that this team needs a new toughness. They're missing a toughness. They're charm and soft. They're missing a grit. They're just missing that intangible that a team that's much worse, like let's say the Chargers or the Steelers that played earlier today in a gritty football contest, those teams have it. They're far less talented than Dallas. Those teams have an intangible of grit that the Cowboys are missing, despite the Cowboys having a great receiver, a good quarterback, maybe not great, but a good quarterback. Right? Like a number of things that you can hang your hat on in terms of big time players. But to me, Dallas just does not have that toughness. They just get bullied. And that's a big problem in the NFL because it feels like the bullies are dominating the league right now. So that's my second takeaway on that game. Next up, let's talk about the Lions and the Cardinals, man. And this game was interesting. It ended up 20-13 for the Lions. The Lions get a big win. They end up being 2-1. Cardinals now 1-2, right? Tied with the Rams and the Niners in the NFC West at 1-2. Detroit, I felt like was the better team in this game, definitely deserved to win. And I think if there's one number that definitely points that out, it's that the Cardinals were 1 for 9 and 0 for 2 on fourth down. So 1 for 9 on third down, 0 for 2 on fourth down. That's 1 for 11 on crucial downs. You just can't win football games with that statistic, right? 277 yards for the Cardinals, only 77 yards rushing. And I think that was my ultimate takeaway from this game for the Cardinals is when they aren't able to run the ball, their offense isn't nearly as dynamic. And I think that is the case for every offense right now in the league. I don't think there's many quarterbacks that can just go out there in the league right now. There's probably like 3, maybe, that you can just say, we're going to throw all game long. We're going to throw the ball 40 times and we're going to win this game. There's just not a lot of those performances out there. And it feels like in today's age, with the way that defenses are playing, the way that offenses are lacking that production offensively, it feels like everything is like run game oriented. If you can slow down the run, you're going to slow down an offense. And I think that's what we saw with the Cardinals. Like, despite Kyler having that magicianship, a lot of these plays were drawn out. Like, Kyler was running around in circles. Nobody open, nobody open, nobody open. He has to throw it away. He throws a one-on-one contested catch, and it just falls incomplete. Like, there was a lot of those plays. I thought Detroit, they're a great run defense. They stuffed Connor. He only had 17 yards on the day. That's extremely impressive for the Cardinals rushing attack. That's one of the best in football, in my opinion. Kyler Murray struggled in this game just to find completions and to find open guys on big downs. And I thought Detroit was really good at just being sticky in coverage. And offensively, Detroit has not been too good. But I will say they got back to their identity. They had 23 first downs. They had nearly as many. They actually had more rushing yards than they did passing yards. 187 rushing yards to 186 passing yards. That was the difference in this game. And that was why I picked Detroit. And this game actually made sense. Right? This week didn't make a lot of sense, but this game made a lot of sense. Detroit ran the ball effectively. Detroit won the game. Arizona did not run the ball effectively. Arizona did not win the game, right? 187 yards rushing. Montgomery, 105 of those yards. I thought Gibbs had some explosive plays in the game, like that little trickery play they had for a touchdown. Amon-Ra had some key clutch catches, 7 for 75 and a touchdown. Marvin Harrison wasn't bad in this game. 5 catches, 64 yards and a touchdown on the other side. But, When you talk about Arizona, I honestly felt like there was a big play in this game where there was a fumble right before the 2-minute warning in the first half that could have resulted in a touchdown for the Cardinals, but it got called back, and it was very debatable. I will say that if that touchdown happens, this game might have gone to overtime. Like, this game might have been 20-20, an overtime game, and who knows who would have won it. But this was another game for me where Detroit was the far better team, and they just weren't convincing, if you know what I mean. Like, Jared Goff was 18 for 23, 199, 3 touchdowns. He did have a pick, but those are good numbers, objectively good numbers. Amon-Ra was producing. David Montgomery produced. They ran the ball well, and yet they only won the game by 7. This was a game where it felt like Detroit should have won by 20. And last week they outgained their opponent by 200 yards. They lost, right? And that game was at home. This game they outgained Arizona by 100. And they only win by 7. So for me, Detroit's playing very good defense. I love the way they're stopping the run. They give themselves a chance every week because they're elite in that category, and they're elite at running the football. And when you're elite at running the football and you're elite at stopping the run in this NFL right now with the lack of consistency from quarterbacks, you're going to be a very good team. So I believe in Detroit. I still feel, they're right at the top of the list. I'm just a little bit disappointed in how they've been unable to escape these close games. Like, they should be convincing in these games the way that they're putting and piling up these stats. But at least for them, unlike the 49ers, they're winning and not dropping these games. So Detroit 2-1, Cardinals 1-2. Cardinals, I'll give their defense credit for hanging in there, making some key sacks, some key plays on third down, some key pressures to force incompletions on third down. Dennis Gardeck stood out. I love the way that they send their blitzes, their pressures, their packages that way. I think they're very good at simulated pressures, things like that. They're not convincing in their run defense. And like I said, I think their offense does struggle a little bit when they're not able to run the ball. I expected more out of Kyler here. I expected more out of McBride, more out of this passing offense than we got. That was a bit disappointing for me. That will definitely be something that I think about moving forward with the Cardinals. I think they're a fairly average, fun team. I think they are what we kind of thought they were, but maybe they're a little bit more feisty than we maybe predicted, just in terms of, I think they proved today that they can at least hang in with a more talented team in a feisty, tough game, but I definitely felt they got outplayed. So those were 3 huge games. Quickly on the Panthers and the Raiders, man. The Panthers destroy the Raiders, and the score was a little deceptive. 36-22 ultimately is the final score. And I just want to say, anybody that is protecting, anybody that is defending Bryce Young at this point, you're just an idiot. I don't know what to tell you. Andy Dalton had the most, I think he had the first 300-yard, 3 passing touchdown game in the entire NFL this year. And it was his first game with the Panthers in basically a year, a season. The Red Rifle came in there with the same surroundings, same receivers, same system, same offensive line, and the Red Rifle diced. The Red Rifle was throwing piss missiles, right? 437 total yards for the Carolina Panthers offense that looked inept through 2 games. 306 passing yards, 131 rushing yards. They completely dominate what I think is a good defense in the Raiders. And their defense showed up for a good portion of this game. They did a good job early in this game, against the Raiders, right? They had 13 more minutes of possession in this game. Deontay Johnson had a breakout game, 8 catches, 122 yards, and a touchdown. Chuba Hubbard had a breakout game, 21 carries, 114 yards. Andy Dalton, 26 for 37, 319, 3 touchdowns, 123 rating. That would be by far the best game of Bryce Young's career. So all I can say is Bryce Young is legitimately the worst quarterback we've probably ever seen get drafted first overall. He's a bigger bust than Jamarcus Russell. His numbers are worse than Jamarcus Russell. This isn't an exaggeration. Andy Dalton at 36 years old. I don't even know how old Andy Dalton is. He might be older than that. Andy Dalton is a legitimate backup at this point in his career. He goes in there. He looks like Tom Brady in this offense behind an offensive line that we knew was playing well. It was that Bryce Young was not playing well. A receiving core that we knew had talent. This is why we were a little bit higher on the Panthers this year than last year. And then Andy Dalton replaces the quarterback. That's all they do. And this team comes out and lays the smack down on the Raiders. And the Raiders got embarrassed in this game. That's a tough loss for Antonio Pierce. You can't get absolutely outcoached, outplayed by a first-time head coach who's been getting absolutely shellacked and hammered the first 2 weeks in Dave Canales. But credit to Dave Canales. Whatever they put in the water, in the magical, mystical potion, maybe it was just Andy Dalton giving this team hope because the defense played way better, the offense played way better, the Panthers played way better. Now this team's 1-2. They got the same record as the 49ers and the Ravens, so there you go. And the great New England Patriots, by the way. Which, by the way, I'm still not over that Patriots game in terms of how they played. I'm over it in terms of, like, the loss, obviously. It was tough, but I'm over it. But they played so bad in that game. The Seahawks beat the Dolphins 24-3. Just quickly on that game, Skylar Thompson was getting hammered. This is my takeaway from this game. The Miami Dolphins need to address their offensive line in the future. It doesn't appear that Miami is going to be any good this year. They're 1-2 now. They did win the first game by a miracle. They got hammered by the Bills, and now they got pretty dominated by Seattle, right? Like, they didn't really win any statistical category. They were 1 for 12 on third down. They only had 205 yards. They had 140 passing yards. Like, they got dominated. They were sacked 6 times. And every time I was watching this game, I didn't pay too close attention, but like early in the game, Seattle played well on offense to kind of gain a lead. Geno, 26 for 34, 289. He did throw 2 picks in the second half. Metcalf had a huge touchdown. I think it was a 70-yarder, 104 yards, 1 touchdown on the day. Charbonnet had a pretty good game, 18 carries, 91 yards, 2 touchdowns. But again, the offensive line of Miami couldn't block a soul. Skylar Thompson, every single time it was a passing snap, he got absolutely broken in half. There was one hit by Dodson where he got sacked where I wasn't sure he was going to get up. And then there was another hit by Draymond Jones where I thought that Skylar Thompson was going to die. Like, I legitimately thought he died on the field. Like, it was... So Miami's offensive line is going to give no quarterback a chance for the rest of the year. They need to address it. They couldn't run the ball with Devon Achane, 11 carries, 30 yards, 2.7 yards per carry. This is a defense in Seattle that allowed 190 yards to the Patriots last week. So that's not a good sign for Miami. Tyreek was held to 3 catches for 40 yards. Good on Seattle's defense. They just continuously made plays when they needed to, right? Like, 4th down, there was 3 4th downs in this game in the second half. I believe Miami, couldn't get any of them to go. All right, 3rd down, 1 for 12. Like, Seattle, I didn't think they were like super convincing in this game. They kind of just like slowly but surely just suffocated Miami. And they made the plays, when Miami had chances to kind of make it closer, Seattle just continuously came up with the play to hold them and halt them. And Miami looked like a team playing with a backup quarterback and a bunch of injuries on the offensive line because they looked terrible on offense. And Mike McDaniel, man, I don't know. Not having a good season so far. The Colts beat the Bears 21-16. This game, I just want to say, I don't understand why Caleb Williams attempted so many passes. This was one of the weirdest games I saw all day. The Bears had 26 first downs. They attempted 21 third downs. They were 9 for 21. They had 26 third and fourth downs. 26, guys. 26. Okay? 332 passing yards for the Bears. They outgained the Colts. But at the end of the day, the difference was the Bears didn't run the ball. The Bears just didn't want to run the ball. They attempted 52 passes with a rookie quarterback. Caleb had a couple boneheaded plays. 2 interceptions. One of them was putrid. And then, of course, you get just like 4 sacks by the Colts because you're dropping back 52 times, 52 attempts. And the Colts, the difference was Jonathan Taylor, 23 carries, 110 yards. He had a long touchdown in this game. He had 2 touchdowns total in this game. Richardson did nothing. He was terrible once again. 10 for 20, 167 yards, 2 picks. Like, the guy sucks. But the Bears, just against the worst run defense in football, they didn't want to run the ball. They decided to throw it 52 times with their rookie quarterback, and that's why they lost. period. It's not like they were really out of reach in this game at any point. Like, it was 14-3 is the worst it got. And they just completely abandoned the run game. And it wasn't 14-3 until the third quarter. It was 7-3 for like a majority of the first half. And they just decided to drop back 52 times. So to me, the coaching in Chicago is inept. Caleb obviously is struggling. The O-line is bad. How can you let them throw the ball that many times? Then you have the Giants and the Browns, 21-15 for the Giants. Shocking results. You know, the Browns are considered a better team. They're at home here. Both teams go 4 for 14 on third down. Giants outproduce them 21 for 16. But the story of the day for me was just how comfortable Daniel Jones was. 24 for 34, 236 yards, 2 touchdowns, 109 passer rating. That should not happen. If you're a legitimate defense, you know, if Cleveland is supposed to have a legitimate defense, you don't allow that successful, that comfortable of a day for Daniel Jones. You're not going to win many games if you're the Cleveland Browns, if you can't force a turnover and you can only get 2 sacks on Daniel Jones and this Giants offense. And then you can't hold their number one weapon. Malik Neighbors, 2 touchdowns, one of them contorting his body, spinorama, 2-touch, double tap in the end zone. Absolutely incredible grab. But the Browns continue to struggle to run the ball. Only 3.7 yards per carry against a terrible run defense in the Giants. 7 catches for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns for the Browns with Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper was the best player for the Browns in this game, I would say. He actually came to play. But the Giants, the story, right? Daniel Jones comfortable. Malik Neighbors did his thing and 8 sacks. This was, of course, a kitchen sink game. The Giants were 0-2. They had to win, right? The Browns 1-1. They lose. They're 1-2. Both these teams 1-2. I just think, like, the Browns, Deshaun holding the ball too long. O-line continues to struggle. Run game is pathetic. And it just feels like if you can negate the pass rush of Cleveland and you can get a pass rush on Cleveland and slow the run game down, you're going to beat Cleveland because their quarterback sucks and they just can't overcome it. So 21-15 Giants. Packers shellacked the Titans 30-14. I lose another bet on the Titans, and I lose another bet betting against Malik Willis. And it's just very frustrating. Will Levis throws a pick 6 in the first quarter. The game's 17-7. It was already over then. You knew it was over. 17-7 after the first quarter. Malik Willis, 13 for 19, 202, 1 touchdown. Looked like the better quarterback in this game. Will Levis sucked. 2 interceptions. He is statistically, not terrible. 26 for 34, 260 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. But it's the picks, and it's at critical times, and it's taking the sacks. Right? Green Bay's D-line dominated. I think that's the low-key stat of the game. 8 sacks for the Packers front against the Titans and Will Levis. It just felt like every third down early in the game, it was rather a bad pass by Levis or it was a sack. That was pretty much how it went. It was like he just kept getting sacked. And then you got to give Matt LaFleur, credit again, setting up his playmakers for success. The first drive says it all. Like, first play of the game, play action, Jaden Reed wide open on a crosser. They hit like a 25-yard gain. He's running down the sidelines. Then they hit Christian Watson on a big jump, a big fade down the right side. And Watson, I think, had multiple of those catches, like 2 30-plus yard gains. Reed, just 4 catches for 50 yards, but they got the ball to him early, right? They got their playmakers the ball early. Then Malik Willis with a read option runs it in. Like, it was very simple. First drive, they go up 7-0. They put the ball in Will Levis's jittery hands. They allow him to make a mistake. They win the game. It's just that simple, right? Once again, the Packers run for 188 yards in this game. Tennessee only runs for 33 yards. We're seeing a trend here, right? The running games being the differences in these games. And to me, 378 yards to 237 yards. Like, just another frustrating bet. Just, I can't, like, I guess Will Levis a little bit better than I gave him credit for, and I'll have to admit that, and I'll take my L. But to be honest, I just think a lot of it is Matt LaFleur. A lot of it's game state. You got to give Matt LaFleur. I think the Packers are legit, bro. When they get Jordan Love back, this might be my favorite in the NFC for the rest of the season. Like, I think they look like, if they can get Jordan Love back, I think they might be the best team in this conference. I had them going to the NFC Championship, so I'm not too shocked. I just think the way they've played without Malik Willis, the way they've been able to run the ball, the way they've been able to protect the quarterback, the way their defense is playing, dominant football. Their front seven has been really, really good. Since that Brazil game, man, they've been lights out. So give the Packers a lot of credit for these last 2 weeks. I think Love will be back next week. They have a huge game with the Vikings, which that's where we're going to transition to the Vikings. 34-7. Vikings take it over the Texans. This was a strange 34-7 game because, ultimately the Vikings, they just, at the end of the day, they just did not concede any sort of points, any sort of plays to the Texans in the second half to allow the Texans to come back. But it felt like for a large majority of this game, the Texans were kind of getting unlucky, and then the Vikings were capitalizing. Like the first drive of the game, Stroud gets the ball tipped by Phillips at the line of scrimmage. It's intercepted. That results in a Justin Jefferson touchdown right off the bat, right? And then you just kind of had that trend for the first half. And it felt like the game was going to be close at the end because the Texans were going to find a way to make it close at the end. And it just never happened. That's kind of the way the game felt to me, right? Even the stats were fairly even, right? Like the Texans actually had more yards than the Vikings, 296 to 274, right? Like, the Vikings only threw for 156 yards. The Vikings had 2 more first downs. The Vikings were better in crucial downs, just like they were against the Niners. 6 for 13, 1 for 1 on fourth down. The Texans, 2 for 4 on fourth, 4 for 14 on third, right? So those, and then I thought the penalties was a huge story. Like the Texans, I think Laramie Tunsil must have had 3 false starts. Titus Howard must have had 3 false starts. They had 11 penalties for 88 yards. Meanwhile, Kevin O'Connell's team, 5 for 30. Like, the Vikings deserve this win. But I do think if there's any of these teams that are 3-0, I think the flukiest so far is the Vikings. I definitely think I foresee them being potentially a playoff team if they can remain healthy enough and they can get their players back. But it feels like a team that might start the season off hot and then kind of fade towards the end. But man, you ultimately have to say the coaching combination between Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores right now, there is not a better combination in the sport right now. Like Kevin O'Connell's putting Sam Darnold in position to succeed. They're running the ball effectively. Aaron Jones looks like Aaron Jones. Justin Jefferson looks like Justin Jefferson. Naylor is a player. Their O-line is pretty darn good. Even, the Texans front, I thought had a really good game for the most part in their pass rush, but the Vikings did well enough to kind of like not allow enough big plays for the Texans, right? The Texans did feel like they pressured Darnold a lot, but Darnold actually navigated it really well, right? So, and then the Vikings defense, man, they just fly around. They have so many playmakers. They have so many guys with incredibly high IQs, ball sense. They're just all over the ball. They send blitzes, and Stroud, I thought, made some plays, but they kept getting negated by penalties. They forced rare mistakes from the Texans and from Stroud. They didn't allow the Texans to run the ball, which is a theme from week to week. These last couple of weeks, the Texans have been unable to run the ball. The Vikings have been really solid in that regard. Jerry Tillery stood out in a huge way to me. I felt like Grugier Hill stood out in a huge way. Gilmore continues to ball out. Harrison Smith. I mean, the Vikings defense is legit. They might be a top 3 defense in the league right now, the way they're playing, and their offense just capitalizes off of those things that the Vikings defense is doing really well. And that coaching staff is just lights out right now. So the Vikings have to be treated with respect. You have to have them in your top 8, top 10 of your power rankings. You might kind of like be a little bit weary about their potential for the future because they might drop a little bit. But it feels like this team, just the way they're coached, the way they play at the line of scrimmage right now against the run, running the ball, protecting the quarterback, rushing the quarterback. I think the Vikings pass rush has been surprisingly super effective. And I think a lot of it is coordinated by the rush and the plan and sort of the blitzes and things like that. But man, I'm extremely impressed there with this team. So 34-7 Vikings, unreal performance by them. Very disappointing for the Texans. Nico Collins was okay, but not his best game. I thought Diggs, kind of did what we expected. A lot of catches, a lot of volume, but not a lot of yards. Tank Dell continues to struggle. And the O-line for the Texans, to me, is the biggest disappointment. They have just been unable to consistently provide protection for Stroud. And when they're not, allowing pressure on Stroud, they're taking penalties. So I think they need to find a way to be better up front. And that's the biggest flaw that I see in the Texans. I don't think this is a bad team. I don't think this is a below average team. I think this is a good team. I think they're a playoff team. I think they're the best team in their division by quite a wide margin. But I view the Texans as a team that's just struggling significantly in one area in particular. Their coverage, maybe a little bit, but mostly the offensive line, the penalties, those things need to be negated for them to continue and to get better. But they're 2-1. They're fine. This is a tough loss, but they'll learn from it. They see their flaws now. They can learn from this tape and move forward. I still have the Texans being a very legitimate team by the end of this year, but they're still young. They're still growing. Remember that. So Vikings, very, very impressive. Texans, not so much. Eagles, 15-12 over the Saints. This was a weird game too. I mean, the Eagles just were trying to lose this game as much, they dominated statistically, like 460 total yards to the Saints, 219 yards. They had 158 more passing yards. They had like 80 more rushing yards. They were better, or just like pretty even on third down, I guess, 6 for 14, 6 for 13, but they had 7 more first downs. To me though, I think, like, the difference for me was just that the Eagles, they kept trying to, like, not kick field goals. They were going for it on fourth down, and they didn't get 2 of them. They were 1 for 3 on fourth down. The Saints got stuffed on a fourth down as well. But the baller that we expected, Saquon Barkley, 17 for 147, 8.6 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. Saquon, he owns the Saints. He had a huge touchdown, a long touchdown that broke the game open for the Eagles and ultimately allowed them to win. It was 3-0 for the Saints for like forever, like until the fourth quarter. And then Saquon broke that 65-yard touchdown to the house. They're up 7-3. Then it's 7-6. And then, the Saints actually take the lead. It looks like they might win this game at 13-7. And then the Eagles score with another Saquon touchdown. But it felt like the Eagles should have won this game by a lot. Like, I think the score is very deceptive. I think a lot of it has to do with Kellen Moore and his inopportune play calling. I think it has to do with Nick Sirianni being a terrible game manager in this game. Just kick the field goals, tie the game up, take the lead wherever you can, right? Like, they missed another field goal from long distance, I believe, as well. Elliott missed like a 55 or 56 yarder in the dome, but I thought the Eagles, the most impressive thing about the Eagles was how physical they played in this game. I thought CJ Gardner-Johnson showed up in a big way in this game. He was tackling hard. Bond, Nakobe Dean, they were hitting. The D-line, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, these guys were just doing a really good job. They were setting the edge really well. It felt like Vic Fangio's coaching points finally stuck. They finally did their thing, and they set the edge. They forced Alvin Kamara, that funneled him inside. They didn't really allow him to get outside. 26 carries, 87 yards, 3.3 yards per carry. Olave had a pretty good day. Dallas Goedert stood out in a big way. 10 catches, 170 yards. He had a huge catch on that final game-winning drive. It was like a 60-yarder on like a drag route, like a mesh concept. Devontae Smith, I believe it was, kind of set like a non-contact pick, and he kind of rubbed off the Saint defender, and Goddard just ran right underneath it, caught that ball for a long gain, set themselves up for the game-winning drive. I think Jalen Hurts continues to be Strugglesville in a lot of ways. He did have 311 yards throwing the ball. He did have some nice scrambles. Statistically, it doesn't look bad. He did throw a pick, but he had, I think, a fumble in this game where he tried to scramble to his left, and he got, taken down by his shoelace and fumbled the ball. He holds on the ball too long. He's getting sacked. Their passing game just fails to have rhythm, I feel like, because of Hurts. They're missing A.J. Brown in that regard for sure to give them some easy plays. But to me, Eagles should have won this game by a lot more. Definitely should have won. And the Saints are who we thought they were or what they would be. They looked a lot worse in this game offensively. They couldn't run the ball, and therefore it set themselves up to just not be as successful. And that's pretty much what we saw in this game. Like, the Saints are running the Shanahan Kubiak offense, and it just feels like they need to run the ball to be successful on offense, and the Eagles didn't allow them to do that. And I just got to give the credit to the Eagles for being the more physical team, because that's a tough thing to do on the road against this Saints team over the years. They've been a very physical football team this year, in past years, and I felt like the Eagles just came out and they out-hit the Saints, and that to me was ultimately the story and why they won the game. Broncos shellacked the Bucs 26-7. This was kind of one of the more predictable upsets, in my opinion. Now, I'm a little bit surprised by the score, 26-7, especially how Tampa was playing, on offense previously. Chris Godwin still did his thing, of course. He had a touchdown, 53 yards on 6 catches. Bucky Irving got some yards later on, but honestly, Baker struggled in this game. He had an interception, only 163 yards. He got sacked 7 times. The Broncos defense might be legit, and I thought this was by far Bo Nix's best game of his career. 25 for 36, 216 yards. Nothing too crazy, but he ran the ball in some scrambles. He threw the ball pretty well. He ran for a touchdown early. McLaughlin had a key 4th down touchdown, 4th and goal touchdown, which was huge. So, yeah, the Broncos give Sean Payton his credit. He continues to own Tampa Bay. Just from the onset, it felt like the Broncos had a great plan offensively. They took advantage of a beat-up Bucs defense. They got to Baker continuously on 3rd down. And that's the thing about Tampa to me that I think I learned in this game. They're a very high leverage team. If they're not good on 3rd down, if they're not good in the red zone, they're going to lose. If they're good on 3rd down, if they're good in the red zone, they're going to win. Now, that's obviously a blanket statement for the league, but I think it's more crucial to Tampa. If you look at how they played at the back end of last year, if you look at how they've played early this year, they've been winning because of their high leverage play at quarterback, their high leverage play on 3rd down and in the red zone. And in this game, they just simply weren't as effective as Denver. Denver was playing, really good on 1st and 2nd down. It felt like that's why they were able to move the ball, because they were only 4 for 13 on 3rd down. Tampa, though, really struggled. 0 for 2 on 4th down, 3 for 11 on 3rd down. And that was ultimately the difference for Tampa. They are a team that are so reliant on those plays, and that's how it was with Tom Brady too. So give Sean Payton that credit. Any other games here? I think that we got the Steelers and the Chargers, I think, is the final game that I haven't discussed. Sunday Night Football is currently just starting right now. The Falcons are driving down the field. We'll see how that game goes, man. This game has been wild. Week 2 was wild. Week 3 is wild. In a lot of ways, the most predictable game of the week was the Steelers and the Chargers, as it should be, because you've got 2 well-coached teams, 2 teams that clearly have an identity, and the Steelers are just a better version of it. And I think that's what we learned, right? Despite their injuries on the offensive line, Justin Fields had a good game. I thought this was actually one of the better games I've seen him play. 25 for 32, 245, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Najee ran the ball hard, 18 carries, 70 yards, 3.9 yards per carry. I thought Herbert kind of sucked. I'm not going to lie, even before getting hurt. 12 for 18, 125 yards and a touchdown. I thought Herbert played poorly. But the Steelers have the best defense in the league. I'll continue to say that. But the Steelers, again, doubled them in 1st downs, 20-10. It was 50% on 3rd down, 7 for 14. Very impressive. Give Arthur Smith credit. And they basically doubled them up in yards. 346 yards, 168 yards, 5 sacks in the game for Pittsburgh compared to 2 for the Chargers. They're just a better version of the Chargers. I think that's kind of what we learned in this game. They only punted 3 times, which is really impressive for the Steelers to do. Especially the Steelers. They'll live with 7 punts in a game. If they only punt 3 times, they'll be very happy. They'll win pretty much every game they play. They shut them out in the second half. The Steelers, they just played their game, man. They got pressure. Herbig really showed up. Highsmith got injured during the game. When the Chargers can't run the ball, they can't win. J.K. Dobbins, 15 carries, 44 yards, 2.9 yards per carry. They can't win that kind of game. They just can't win it. So that's a big takeaway for me is if there's a team that's good against the run, bet against the Chargers, because they don't really have much of a passing game. Herbert couldn't consistently get that protection that he was getting in previous weeks because of how good the Steelers' pass rush is. And then Fields didn't make too many mistakes. He did have his first turnover of the year, but he didn't make too many mistakes, and he made more plays this week, it seemed, than he did in previous weeks. I think the Chargers are just an average team. They're just a team that is well coached, that will play situational football, that has a good quarterback, but they're just not that talented. I actually thought that Derwin James played really well in this game. He stood out to me on the Chargers side. I'm trying to think of anything else. I'm just continually impressed by the front 7 of the Steelers. Their linebacker play has been outstanding. And yeah, like I don't think you can strip the job of Justin Fields. They're 3-0 now. They're leading this division. They're the best team in this division right now in terms of their record. This was a bigger test for them, and they came through with the W. It's what we expected. 20-10, right? 20-10. That's a Steeler football game. Like not a lot to add there. So that's my week 3 reaction, guys. That's what I thought. That's what I made of it. Drake London scores a touchdown to open up Sunday Night Football. Kirk Cousins on a heater. We're gonna get to that game. Man, good performance. Good performance. Crazy week. Tough betting week for sure. I hope you guys did well. Just counting my picks, we're going to have to get that down the road. Monday Night Football is going to be a doubleheader. That's going to be a lot of fun. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this reaction to Sunday Football. Gronk spiked the like button. That's how I'll know that you guys want more of these reactions. And maybe we can work something out. And because, I don't know, Monday is going to be tricky for me to do these type of videos. I'd rather do them on Sunday here. It might mean one less stream. Like maybe we do one stream, especially if the Patriots are playing, right? Because the Patriots are the biggest draw for me every week. It feels like consistently if the Patriots play early and then I have a second stream later, the viewership drops off in the second game to the degree where it's not even worth it for me. So maybe if we do like one stream or the Patriots every Sunday, and we come back at it with Thursday night, Monday night streams, and we do this style of a review on Sunday later on, that might be the way that we do it for the rest of the season, because that might be the most efficient way of getting the best content to you guys. So thanks for watching. It's Mitch. Gronk spiked the like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll see you later. Peace.